Hello friends, welcome to the discussion of One Day One Answer. This is initiative of GS Score for the purpose of enhancing your answer writing skills. So today the subject that we are taking into consideration is international relations, and the theme that we are looking into is India and its neighbors. So for the purpose of international relations, now I'll just give an overview. International relations, as you know, the questions appear in GS paper 2. What you have to do for international relations, or what impact basically international relations will have on your overall scoring. देखो, with reference to marks, international relations carry 50 to 60 marks every year in GS paper 2. So there are 4 questions basically, more or less there are 4 questions. The importance of international relations basically is beyond these 4 questions. The reason I tell you this is getting maximum marks out of this 50 is relatively easy. So proportionately, if you see and compare IR with polity or governance as such, which carry 100 marks, so the way in which I look at it, or the way in which other faculties also to an extent look at it, is कि conversion of marks or acquiring or maximizing marks is relatively easy in IR than if you compare it to polity and governance. And again, the reason for that is most of the questions in international relations are those which the content of which you will be having. Now why is it so? It is so, the reason for that is कि international relations is wholly dependent, the questions are wholly dependent on what is basically happening in current affairs, and current affairs basically is something that every aspirant of UPSC goes through. So current affairs, if you are relatively you have well prepared current affairs now, then what basically will happen is international relations ke questions you will be able to solve. Alright, IR ke questions you will be able to solve. That does not mean at all that reference to books should not be made. Reference to books has to be made, because that reference will give depth to your answers. It will give vocabulary to your answers, vocabulary of IR to your answers. And as we get into the specific themes of India and its neighbors, so there are some common parameters that you have to tick while writing answers to it. Question on India and its neighbors appear every year. Every year there will be a question on India and one of its neighbors, mostly SAARC countries. Mostly SAARC countries. Question may though also come upon India and its external neighborhood, that is West Asia and East Asia. But still, what we are doing over here is we are sticking to immediate neighborhood of India. So what are the common parameters that you have to more or less include in your answers? Of course, their inclusion, range of their inclusion will depend upon specifics that have been asked in the question. So what I will do is I will first and foremost draw parameters, and then we will take a question from previous years. I have taken the question from mains 2024 itself. We will look into that, but pehle let us see what check boxes have to be ticked, what parameters have to be included in your answer. सबसे पहले, first and foremost, when you write an answer on IR, when you basically write an answer on the question of IR, in the theme of India and its neighborhood, what you have to basically do is identify the context in which the question has been asked. So identify the background in the introduction. Identify the background. And based on that background, provide for an overview in the introduction. Provide for an overview in the introduction of relations between India and that particular country. That has to be done. That basically has to be done. So for example, the question is on India helping Sri Lanka during its time of crisis. So what has to be your introduction? Your introduction basically has to be कि Sri Lanka was in economic crisis, Sri Lanka has been in economic crisis, and during this economic crisis, what has India done? It has extended the hand of assistance, and this is for the reason of India sharing a common history and India being a friend of Sri Lanka. Alright, so what you have done is you have basically provided a context, and you have also provided ओवरऑल और ओवरव्यू ऑफ रिलेशन बिटवीन इंडिया एंड श्रीलंका, ठीक है, overview of relation between India and Sri Lanka. Then basically when we get into the main body na, more or less then what has to be done? First and foremost, you have to speak about historical ties. Again I am saying it is not compulsory this all of this parameter have to be used in one answer itself. It depends upon the context of the question. It depends upon the focus of the question. ठीक है. तो historical background, in historical background, what basically I will want you to include is, civilizational ties, colonial ties, that means if the need be also include how basically colonialism in South Asia affected the relation between India and its neighbor, for example India and China. ठीक है, the Tibet problem that we see more or less is due to the colonial influence. ठीक है, other than that what you can also do is point towards a particular agreement or treaty. For example, when you write an answer on India-Nepal relations, ठीक है, there has to be inclusion of the 1951 treaty between India and Nepal, friendship treaty between India and Nepal, that has to be included. Third thing that you have to take into consideration is the areas of cooperation. Areas of cooperation between India and that particular country. यहाँ पे ना the first item that you have to highlight is economic cooperation. The first pointer that you have to highlight is economic cooperation. Second, security and defense ties. Security and defense ties between India and that particular country. For example, if I am writing about again India and Nepal relations, then I will basically include Surya Kiran, ठीक है, military exercise Surya Kiran, ठीक है. Again, economic ties में ना, what I will do is I will portray, if I have to take into consideration economic ties, then obviously I will portray free trade agreement between India and that particular country. Third, cultural and social ties. For example, if the question is on India-Sri Lanka relations, then the Buddhist theme, ठीक है, that in a way glues together India and Sri Lanka, it will find its mention in the answer. ठीक है. When it comes to say India and Myanmar or say India and Bangladesh, then roti beti rishta, ठीक है, roti beti का रिश्ता will be included in your answer. It will be included in your answer. Last, connectivity and infrastructure. Connectivity and infrastructure. ठीक है. So where we are cooperating together for the purpose of enhancing regional connectivity. ठीक है, where we are basically doing that has to be mentioned. So in India and Bangladesh relation, cooperation with respect to Mangla port will find its presence. Also with respect to India and Nepal as India and Bangladesh again, ठीक है, integrated check post is something that has to be mentioned. ठीक है. So infrastructure and connectivity. In connectivity, if there is any multinational project, multi-country project, then give it a preference in your answer. For example, if I have to write about Bhutan, if I am writing an answer on relation between India and Bhutan or India and Nepal or India and Bangladesh, then BBIN will find its mention. BBIN होना ही चाहिए, ठीक है. Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, that particular project has to find its mention. ठीक है. One more thing, let me take it up right now, and that is minilateralism. ठीक है. When we look at South Asia, now what India has developed, or even at the global stage, but more with respect to South Asia, India has developed something called as minilateralism, that is 2 or 3 countries working together. ठीक है, it is not similar to what we have seen in the past. In the past, we have seen 7 or 8 countries coming together and acting on a particular objective, that is multilateralism. Now we are moving towards minilateralism, and we have started realizing that minilateralism provides us better results. To use these particular terms, vocabulary of a particular subject is very important. Vocabulary of a particular subject is very important. So wherever you find some words that will provide you an edge over others, use those particular words. So these are areas of cooperation. These have to be mentioned. Okay. Then we come to major challenges in relations between India and that particular country. Okay. Major challenges between India and that particular country. So when it comes to suppose India and China or India and Pakistan, obviously what will come up? Border disputes, or for that matter ठीक है, when you consider neighboring countries ना, तो this is the first challenge. This is always a first challenge. ठीक है, in context of India, obviously we face this challenge with respect to 2 countries, that is Pakistan and China. ठीक है, so in relations, whenever the question is on relations with Pakistan and China, border disputes will come up. Second is security threats. Now security threats can range from terrorism through funding Naxalism or funding secessionist activities. तो वो भी आपको मेंशन करना पड़ेगा. For example, it is known that China does fund or China does support secessionist activities in Northeast. ठीक है, तो that has to find its mention in your answer when it comes to challenges, when it basically comes to challenges. Third is water disputes. Third basically is water disputes. So in water disputes, obviously TESTA agreement between India and China, or TESTA disagreement between India and China, agreement has still not happened, or sharing of water disputes between India and Nepal will find its way. Now what we see is Indus Water Treaty being disputed by both India and Pakistan. Both want changes to it. ठीक है, तो water disputes have to come in your answer if the answer is more oriented toward challenge, or the answer is about overall relations between India and its neighbor. Another important challenge that has come up in South Asia with respect to India, India is facing this challenge, and that is migrations, and that too illegal migrations. तो यहाँ पे again 2 countries are specific, and that is Bangladesh and Myanmar. ठीक है, Rohingyas from Myanmar, and other than that Bangladesh refugees coming to India, illegal Bangladesh refugees coming to India and challenging the relations between India and Bangladesh. ठीक है, ऊपर से the last point that I will make with respect to challenges, the last point basically that I will make with respect to challenges is external influence. I mean the influence that relations between India and its neighbors, influence that occurs on relations between India and its neighbors from a country that is outside the region of South Asia. तो यहाँ पे ना obviously the most important power is China. The most important power is China. So Chinese influence over relations between India and its neighbor have to find place in your answer. Again, depending upon the nature of the question and the focus of the question. So these basically are first 4 common parameters that will more or less be in your answers. There are few more, I will talk about them. But have a look at these 4 parameters. Have a look at these 4 parameters, understand these 4 parameters, and try to include them in your answer. Now going ahead, अब जब आंसर में आगे बढ़ते हो तो what you have to basically write. What you have to basically write. You have to also include in your answer strategic importance of that particular country. और ओवरऑल इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर कंट्री. ठीक है, ओवरऑल इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर कंट्री. What has to be also part of the answer is future prospect. But थोड़ा सा strategic importance पे देख लेते हैं. When you take into consideration strategic importance of a particular country, it can be from the point of view of its location. It can be from the point of view of its population. For example, maintaining good relations at this point of time with Bangladesh is important. Why? Because protection of minorities become important. ठीक है, any harm to minorities in Bangladesh can have ramifications in India, है ना? So that is why importance of that particular country has to be mentioned in your answer. Other than that, the role that country will play in counter-terrorism, the role that country will play in counter-terrorism or to counter secessionist activities in India, that also has to be mentioned. That basically also has to be mentioned. Last but not the least, economic importance. Economic importance of that particular country needs to find its way in your answer. Economic importance of that particular country needs to find its way in your answer. ठीक है. Now, some of the common programs or schemes, some of the common programs or schemes that will always be part of an answer related to India and its neighbors. Most of the time it will be part. ठीक है. And also some institutions. So when it comes to programs ना, neighborhood first policy has to be mentioned in most of the cases. Apart from Pakistan, neighborhood first policy is applicable on all the neighbors of India ना. So neighborhood first policy will have to be there. I'm sorry for my spelling mistake. Neighborhood first policy will have to be there. Other than neighborhood first policy, the Sagar initiative, will have to be there, and other than that, Project Mosam. Project Mosam. ठीक है. Now moving to organizations. When you talk about relations between India and its neighbors now, there are platforms through which India and its neighbors convey business or meet. They meet and talk and convey business bilaterally also, but also through some other organizations. ठीक है, तो mention of those organizations becomes important. Mention of those organizations become important. For example, SAARC or BIMSTEC. ठीक है. Other than that, Indian Ocean Rim Association. Indian Ocean Rim Association. This particular organizations have to find their way in your answer. If the need be, also take into consideration global organizations. So suppose there is cooperation between India and one of its neighbors in WHO or WTO, ठीक है, or IMF for that matter. So when economic crisis happened in Sri Lanka, India cooperated with Sri Lanka in IMF for the purpose of securing loan for Sri Lanka. ठीक है, तो उसका मेंशन होना चाहिए. The mention of that has to be in your answer. The mention of that basically has to be in your answer. ठीक है. And then of course, in the end, you have to write future prospects. Even if the question is not related to future prospect, provide a future prospect, because international relations, ठीक है, steps that are taken in international relations are not without understanding or forecasting what will be in the future. तो वो लिखना ही पड़ेगा. फ्यूचर प्रोस्पेक्ट्स विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू इंडियाज रिलेशंस विथ इट्स नेबर हैज टू बी देयर इवन इफ इट इज नॉट स्पेसिफिकली आस्क्ड इन योर क्वेश्चंस. ठीक है, तो फ्यूचर प्रोस्पेक्ट्स हैव टू बी future prospects basically have to be mentioned. ठीक है, so these are the parameters that have to go in your answer. These basically are the parameters that you must see to it have found their mention in your answer generally. ठीक है, in general. Now let us go to today's PYQ. Now this question was asked recently in the mains of 2024. What basically is the question and how will you deal with it in the examination, or how will you deal with question similar to it? So what is the question? First let us read it. Discuss the geopolitical and geostrategic importance of Maldives for India with a focus on global trade and energy flow. Further, also discuss how this relation affects India's maritime security and regional stability amidst international cooperation. Okay, so what this question wants you to do is, it wants you to focus on geopolitical and geostrategic importance of Maldives. Done. ठीक है, but it specifically wants you to do it through global trade and energy flow. Global trade and energy flow. ठीक है, that means location of Maldives, ठीक है, oceans surrounding it, and in a way role that Maldives can play over navigational traffic has to be mentioned. Role that Maldives can play over navigational traffic has to be mentioned, and also overall impact that India's relations with Maldives will have in maritime security of India and also regional stability, that has to be mentioned. So what it basically wants you to portray is that if India has good relations with Maldives, what will happen is India's maritime security will be strengthened. ठीक है, and what it will also do is it will provide an opportunity for India to be net security provider. Now remember this term and do use it. It will provide an opportunity for India to be a net security provider in South Asia and in the region of Indian Ocean. ठीक है, it will provide an opportunity for India to maintain peace and regional stability in the region. It will provide an opportunity for India to undertake economic development through which again regional stability can happen. Now when we talk about regional stability, now we will look into it in a more elaborate manner, but do not focus only on security angle. Please do not focus only on security angle. Regional stability is multidimensional. ठीक है, चलो let us look at what will basically go into the introduction of the answer. So if I have to introduce this particular answer, in the first line itself, what I will maintain is Maldives has immense geopolitical importance for India. Maldives basically has immense geopolitical and geostrategic value for India. And this value basically is for the reason of its location, due to which this particular value mainly is due to its location, which in a way provides for India having better maritime dynamics, leading to its own enhanced security and regional stability. Enhanced security and regional stability. ठीक है, This is your introduction. Now remember, whenever you write introduction, introduction cannot be generalized. It has to specifically speak about what will be coming in the main body. One suggestion that I will give with respect to writing in the introduction is, before thinking about introduction, what happens is most of the students start thinking about the answer by giving primacy to introduction. First thing what will go in the main body of the answer. Okay, once you have got the points with respect to main body, then you draft your introduction, because your introduction has to state what will come in the main body. Now remember two things. Remember that any answer, alright, remember that any answer should have two things in it. First is sense of continuity and second is sense of completion. Sense of continuity and sense of completion make your answer wholesome. Okay? They give first and foremost a flow to your answer, alright. And what they also do is they help in ticking all the parameters. Okay? And if these two okay, things are in your answer, what will happen is an examiner to an extent might ignore certain deficiencies in your answer. He might ignore certain deficiencies in your answer. Of course, content has to be there. Okay? You cannot just play on the basis of continuity. That continuity has to have some content. But if there is some deficiency, because of the structuring of your answer, that will get covered up. That to a certain extent may get covered up. Okay? So introduction has to give a glimpse of what will be coming in the main body of the answer. Chalo. So the first impact basically just give me a second. Okay, the first point in importance, if I may say, when it comes to geopolitical and geostrategic pointers, is having better relations with Maldives. Okay? Or Maldives as a country, it becomes important for India because it basically showcases India's reach or India's relations with its neighbors. Traditionally, India and Maldives have had a good relation. Okay? In terms of geopolitics and in terms of geostrategy, some countries in a way are for the purpose of we showcasing what we basically stand for in international relations or on global platforms. Okay? So Maldives in a way for many years now has been an example of what India delivers to its partners or what India delivers to its neighbors. So it is basically prime example of India's generosity to its neighbors. Okay? That is basically the first pointer. Second pointer is Maldives becomes important geopolitically and geostrategically because of its location. Obviously, because of its location. All right. Location of Maldives basically is such that it is at the confluence of Asia, Africa and West Asia. South Asia, West Asia and Africa, and to an extent also the oceanic countries. So what happens is Maldives basically sits on the junction through which it can visibly observe and navigate global traffic and the traffic that basically affects India. And in it, the most important traffic is of course of energy supplies. Okay. Taking into consideration the Red Sea crisis, what we also know from the point of view of Maldives is it becomes important for India geopolitically and geostrategically for the purpose of keeping Indian Ocean region safe for navigation from pirates and terrorists. From pirates and terrorists. यहाँ पे you have to specifically mention about the Red Sea crisis. यहाँ पे you have to specifically mention about the Red Sea crisis. Geopolitically and geostrategically, Maldives is also important because string of pearls has to be negated by India. So don't explain string of pearls, don't basically explain string of pearls in your answer then and there itself, because it will not provide you enough space and enough time. But string of pearls basically is an initiative of China where it plans to surround India by building military ports. Okay? If that happens, then it will create problems for India's external security. Now, Maldives is one of the places where China's influence has increased, and Maldives is also one of the places where China basically has attempted to create a port. Okay. If that port is created, then it will be a setback for us geopolitically and geostrategically. So, for the purpose of avoiding that setback, Maldives becomes very important for us. Plus, looking at Maldives, what do we also see is Maldives has the potential of becoming a regional hub. Regional trading hub. Okay, which will of course help us economically. Now, geopolitics and geostrategy include economy. Alright. Hence, I say do not think about it only from the point of view of security. Now, taking into consideration how this relation can impact India's maritime security as such, and regional stability, and what will be the points included, So, first and foremost, now when you take into consideration good relations between India and Maldives, so in impact if I write, so relations between India and Maldives will have an impact over India's naval presence in the region. Naval presence also and naval cooperation also. Not only that, it will also have an impact with respect to India coordinating with island countries of Indian Ocean for better security of the region. Okay, it is not only Maldives, yes, Maldives is important, but Maldives along with Seychelles, Maldives along with Mauritius, Maldives along with other smaller island countries of the region, what they do is they enhance the security of the region. Okay, they allow naval presence of India, and they also allow joint operation between the navies. That is why, and that is the way in which relations between India and Maldives will affect maritime security. Other than that, obviously there is the China factor. Better relations between India and China, or between India and Maldives, or relations between India and Maldives will also determine whether external influence will be observed in the Indian Ocean region. Obviously, if there is external influence, this to a certain extent again will be a setback for India's maritime security. India has always believed that maritime security of the region in a way is India's responsibility, and India is net security provider. India basically is the net security provider. So, inclusion of China or other external source which has an hostile attitude towards India, what it will do is it will impact India's maritime security and India's stability. Not only India's stability, regional stability for that matter, because it will lead to a competition between India and that particular external country. it will adversely be impacted. All right. Third is maritime awareness. Maritime awareness. Surveillance over the region, surveillance and monitoring capacity of India in the Indian Ocean region to a large extent depend upon relations between India and Maldives. It depends upon the relations between India and Maldives. So they will basically be impacted. They will basically be impacted in a good way if relations improve, in a bad way if relations basically deteriorate between India and Maldives. If the relation basically deteriorate between India and Maldives. Okay. Again from the point of view of maritime security itself and regional stability itself, stability in Maldives, okay, with good relations with India, stability in Maldives, what it will do is it will basically provide an example to the country in the regions for maintaining political stability. Instability in Maldives, and it has been seen in the past also, what it will do is it may have a domino effect over the island countries of the region, and this particular domino effect or this particular instability will lead to external factors getting included in domestic politics of Maldives, having a more cascading effect. All right, having more cascading effects, and therefore troubling the regional security. All right, so this overall has to be your answer. So what we have seen in this particular question is कि how we have to move from the main body of the answer to the introduction. ठीक है, move from main body of the answer towards the introduction. Other thing, when you dissect a particular term, now try to bring in multiple approaches to that particular term. ठीक है, a term or its vocabulary, ठीक है, or its word may include or showcase, a particular term might showcase a particular term might showcase one particular meaning. A term might showcase one particular meaning, but on dissection of it, what do you see? What do you basically see? Multiple areas being operational, or that particular term being operational in multiple areas. So that particular interpretation, वो वाला interpretation आपको उठाना है, जिसके through what will happen is your answer will have an expanded horizon. Your answer basically will have an expanded horizon. ठीक है, so यहाँ पे what we did with in geopolitical and geostrategic importance, we included regional security also, we included regional economy also, we included transport lines also. So that has to be done by you. That basically has to be done by you. All right, thank you so much guys.